The violent summer storm that had scarred Clara Bennett's face 6 years ago had also changed the course of her life forever. As lightning slashed through the sky above the small town of Ukiah, California, in the summer of 1876, she pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the stage-coach window, watching the familiar buildings slide into view with a mixture of hope and dread. Coming home had never been so difficult. Clara adjusted the lace handkerchief she kept perpetually draped over the right side of her face, concealing the network of raised, red scars that stretched from her temple to her jaw. At 24, she had resigned herself to a life of sidelong glances and hushed whispers. The boarding school in San Francisco, where she'd taught for the past 4 years, had closed unexpectedly, leaving her with nowhere to go except back to her hometown, a place that had already rejected her once. The stagecoach lurched to a halt outside Ukiah's Soul Hotel, stirring dust that caught the late afternoon sunlight. Clara gathered her modest belongings, took a deep breath, and stepped down onto the main street. "Clara Bennett, is that you?" Clara turned to see Mrs. Holloway, the town's postmistress, staring at her with undisguised curiosity. "Yes, madam, I've returned home." "My goodness, child, we'd heard you were teaching back east." Mrs. Holloway's eyes kept darting to the handkerchief, as though she might see through it if she looked hard enough. "San Francisco, actually," Clara corrected gently. "The school closed. I'll be staying with my aunt for now." Before Mrs. Holloway could respond, a commotion erupted further down the street. A group of men burst out of the saloon, their voices raised in anger. Clara instinctively shrank back, clutching her valise closer. "Damn fool," one of them shouted. "You can't just ride in here and tell us how to manage our affairs." The object of their anger stood with his back to Clara, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a well-worn leather vest over a faded blue shirt. His stance was relaxed, despite being confronted by 3 agitated men. "I'm not telling you how to manage anything," the stranger replied, his voice deep and steady. "I'm just saying that running the Paxton family off their claim without proper cause isn't right." "They couldn't pay their debts," snapped a short, portly man Clara recognized as Harold Wilcox, who owned the town's general store. "Business is business." "Seems mighty convenient that their claim showed gold right after you foreclosed," the stranger said, pushing back his hat to reveal thick, dark hair. "And mighty strange how no one's seen old man Paxton or his boy since they were escorted out of town." Clara found herself frozen in place, watching the confrontation. The stranger didn't raise his voice or reach for the gun holstered at his hip, yet something about his presence commanded attention. "Who the hell are you to question us?" demanded another man, this one stepping threateningly close. The stranger turned slightly, and Clara caught a glimpse of his profile, strong jaw, straight nose, a day or two worth of stubble. "Name's Garrett Hayes. Just passing through, but I've got a nose for something that doesn't smell right." Harold Wilcox's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "We don't take kindly to outsiders throwing around accusations, Hayes. Best you move along before you find trouble you didn't bargain for." Garrett Hayes shrugged, seemingly unperturbed by the threat. "I'll move along when I'm ready. Meantime, I'm paid up at the hotel and looking for honest work." The men muttered among themselves before dispersing, throwing dark looks over their shoulders. As they walked away, Garrett Hayes turned fully, and his eyes met Clara's across the dusty street. For a heartbeat, she forgot about the handkerchief covering her scars. His gaze was direct, clear as mountain water, and somehow she felt he was seeing her, really seeing her in a way no one had in years. Then reality crashed back. Clara lowered her head and hurried toward her aunt's house, feeling the weight of his stare following her retreat. Aunt Martha's cottage sat at the edge of town, surrounded by a neat garden that had been Clara's refuge as a child. After her parents had died of fever when she was 12, Aunt Martha had raised her with firm but loving hands. Even after the accident that left Clara scarred, her aunt had never treated her differently, one of the few people who hadn't. "Clara, thank the heavens you've arrived safely." Aunt Martha embraced her at the door, her wiry frame surprisingly strong. At 60, Martha Palmer remained as energetic as women half her age, her silver hair pulled back in a practical bun, her apron dusted with flour. "It's good to see you, Aunt Martha," Clara said, returning the embrace. Her aunt pulled back, studying her face with concern. "You're too thin, child." "San Francisco didn't feed you properly." Clara smiled, relaxing for the first time since stepping off the stagecoach. "The food was fine. I've just been worried since the school closed." "Well, you're home now. Come in and rest while I finish supper." Inside the cottage, little had changed. The same faded curtains hung at the windows. The same braided rug warmed the wooden floor. Clara ran her fingers along the back of a familiar chair, memories washing over her, both the happy ones from childhood and the painful ones after the accident. She had been 18 when lightning struck the tree beside their house. A branch had crashed through her bedroom window, showering her with glass and wood splinters. The town doctor had done his best, but the right side of her face would never be the same. In the months that followed, Clara had watched as friends grew uncomfortable around her, as the young man who had been courting her suddenly found reasons to be busy, as mothers pulled their children away when she approached. San Francisco had been an escape, a place where she could reinvent herself among strangers. Now she was back where everyone knew her story, where the whispers would follow her everywhere. "You haven't changed that handkerchief," Aunt Martha observed as they sat down to supper. "You know you don't need it in this house." Clara's hand moved instinctively to touch the lace. "It's become a habit, a hiding habit," her aunt said softly. "Your scars don't define you, Clara." "They've defined how others see me," Clara replied, removing the handkerchief and folding it carefully beside her plate. The evening light streaming through the window felt uncomfortably revealing on her exposed skin. Aunt Martha reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "Not everyone sees with the same eyes. Now tell me your plans. Will you look for another teaching position?" Clara nodded. "Ukiah's school needs an assistant teacher. I saw the notice before I left San Francisco. I'll speak with Mr. Peterson tomorrow." "Good. You were always meant to teach. Those children will be lucky to have you." Later that night, lying in her childhood bed, Clara found herself thinking of the stranger, Garrett Hayes, and the way he'd looked at her. There had been something in his gaze, not pity, not curiosity, but something else she couldn't quite name. She touched the scars on her cheek, tracing their familiar pattern in the darkness, and wondered what it would be like to be seen as whole again. Morning arrived with golden light and the scent of coffee. Clara dressed carefully in her best blue dress, affixed the lace handkerchief, and headed to the schoolhouse at the center of town. Ukiah was small but prosperous, serving the surrounding ranches and mining operations. The schoolhouse was a simple white building with a bell tower, standing proudly beside the church. Mr. Peterson, the schoolmaster, was a thin, balding man with spectacles perched perpetually on the end of his nose. Clara had been his student once, and he greeted her with a warm handshake. "Miss Bennett, a pleasure to see you again. I heard you were teaching in San Francisco, quite prestigious." "Thank you, sir. The school closed rather suddenly, and I've returned home. I saw your advertisement for an assistant teacher." Mr. Peterson's expression shifted slightly, his eyes flicking to the handkerchief and then away. "Ah, yes. Well, that position has become complicated," Clara's heart sank. Complicated. Several parents have expressed concern about, well, they worry about frightening the younger children. You understand, I'm sure. The familiar rejection washed over her. I was an excellent teacher in San Francisco, Mr. Peterson. The children there weren't frightened. I'm sure you were, Miss Bennett. But here in Ukiah, the parents have certain expectations. Perhaps a position that's less visible might be more suitable. Clara stood straighter, fighting back tears. Thank you for your time, Mr. Peterson. She walked out of the schoolhouse with her head high, but inside she was crumbling. The streets seemed to close in around her as she made her way toward the general store. She needed thread for Aunt Martha, and she refused to hide in the cottage just because the town hadn't changed. The bell above the door jingled as she entered Wilcox's general store. Harold Wilcox himself stood behind the counter, and his smile faltered when he saw her. Miss Bennett. Back in town, are you? Yes, Mr. Wilcox. I need 3 spools of white thread, please. As he reached for the thread, the door opened behind her. Clara didn't turn, focusing instead on counting coins from her small purse. Afternoon, came a deep voice she recognized from yesterday. I'm looking for work gloves. Mine are about worn through. Clara glanced sideways to see Garrett Hayes standing beside her at the counter. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes that were a startling shade of green, like spring leaves in sunlight. He had to be in his early 30s, his face weathered by sun and wind, but handsome in a rugged way that made her heart beat a little faster. Mr. Wilcox's expression soured. Back again, Hayes. I thought I made it clear yesterday that outsiders stirring up trouble aren't welcome here. I'm not stirring anything, Garrett replied easily. Just need gloves, unless you'd rather not sell to me. The storekeeper grudgingly pulled a pair of leather work gloves from a shelf. $4. Highway robbery, Garrett remarked, but he laid the money on the counter without argument. As Mr. Wilcox wrapped the gloves in paper, Garrett turned to Clara. Don't believe we've been properly introduced. Garrett Hayes. Clara hesitated, then extended her hand. Clara Bennett. His grip was firm but gentle. Miss Bennett, you're local to Ukiah. I grew up here. Just returned after teaching in San Francisco for several years. A teacher. Impressive. His eyes held hers, and again she had that strange sensation that he was looking past her handkerchief, past her defenses. What subjects? Literature and mathematics for young ladies, she replied, surprised by his genuine interest. Mr. Wilcox cleared his throat pointedly. Your thread, Miss Bennett. That'll be 15 cents. Clara paid and gathered her purchase, aware of both men watching her. Good day, gentlemen, she said, turning to leave. Miss Bennett, Garrett called after her, might I walk with you? These streets can get lively this time of day. Before she could respond, Mr. Wilcox interjected. Miss Bennett knows her way around Ukiah better than you do, Hayes, and she doesn't need your kind of attention. Clara felt a flash of indignation. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. I would welcome the company. Outside, the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly. Clara opened her parasol, careful to keep it positioned to shade the right side of her face. Mr. Wilcox seems to have taken a dislike to you, she observed as they walked. Garrett chuckled. I tend to have that effect on men who bend the rules to suit themselves. The Paxton family you mentioned yesterday, were they friends of yours? Never met them, but I've seen their type of situation before. Small-time miners pushed off their claims when they start showing color. He glanced down at her. You ask a lot of questions for someone who's trying not to be noticed, Clara stiffened. I wasn't aware I was trying not to be noticed. The parasol, the handkerchief, the way you keep to the sides of the street. His voice held no judgment, only observation. Someone hurt you, Miss Bennett, not just your face. She stopped walking, stunned by his directness. You're very presumptuous, Mr. Hayes. My mother called it having no proper filter between brain and mouth. She wasn't wrong. His smile was apologetic. I didn't mean to offend. Clara studied him, trying to discern his intentions. Why did you ask to walk with me? Because I wanted to. Because you looked like you could use a friendly face after whatever happened in that schoolhouse. He tilted his head. And because you're the only person in this town who didn't look at me like I was something the cat dragged in. A reluctant smile tugged at her lips. The cat would need to be quite large. His laugh was unexpected and genuine. Indeed it would. Where are we headed, Miss Bennett? I was returning home. My aunt's cottage is at the end of Cedar Street, Martha Palmer's place. I've done some repair work for her. Solid woman, your aunt. Clara's eyebrows rose in surprise. You've been in town longer than I thought. Couple of weeks. Long enough to fix some roofs, mend some fences, and apparently make some enemies. He gestured ahead. Shall we continue? As they walked, Clara found herself relaxing in his presence. Garrett Hayes asked about her teaching in San Francisco. Speaking of books he'd read and places he'd seen with an intelligence that belied his rough appearance. By the time they reached Aunt Martha's gate, Clara realized she had been so engaged in conversation that she'd forgotten to be self-conscious about her scars. "Thank you for the escort, Mr. Hayes," she said, pausing by the gate. "My pleasure, Miss Bennett." He tipped his hat. "I hope our paths cross again." Clara watched him stride away, his tall figure cutting a distinctive silhouette against the afternoon sky. She had a feeling their paths would indeed cross again, and the thought sent an unexpected thrill through her. Aunt Martha was hanging laundry in the back garden when Clara entered the cottage. "How did it go at the school?" she called. Clara joined her aunt, taking clothespins from the basket. "Not well. Mr. Peterson thinks I might frighten the children." "Nonsense. What children wouldn't benefit from learning that life leaves marks on us all?" Aunt Martha's indignation was fierce. "What will you do now?" "I don't know yet. Perhaps the newspaper needs help, or the dressmaker." "You're a teacher, Clara. Don't let small minds diminish your calling." Her aunt pinned a sheet to the line with more force than necessary. "I saw you walking with Garrett Hayes." Clara felt her cheeks warm. "He offered to escort me home. He's a good man. Been helping around town where he's needed, asking fair pay for honest work." Aunt Martha gave her a knowing look, and not hard on the eyes either. "Aunt Martha," Clara laughed despite herself, "we barely know each other. Getting to know people is what time is for, my dear." Her aunt reached for another sheet. "He asked about you, you know. Last week when he was fixing my roof. Said he'd seen your photograph on my mantel and wondered who you were." Clara's heart skipped. "What did you tell him?" "The truth. That you're my brilliant, beautiful niece who's been away teaching." Aunt Martha's eyes softened. Nothing more, nothing less. That night, Clara found herself standing before the mirror in her bedroom, the handkerchief removed. The scars caught the lamplight, a web of raised tissue that pulled slightly at the corner of her eye and mouth. She traced them with her fingertip, remembering the pain, the fear, the long recovery. But for the first time in years, she also wondered what it might be like to be seen, fully seen by someone who looked at her the way Garrett Hayes had today, with interest and respect rather than pity or revulsion. The following morning, Clara set out to inquire at the newspaper office. The Ukiah Sentinel was a small operation run by Edmund Walker, a crusty veteran of the newspaper business who had lost an arm in the Civil War. He greeted Clara with frank appraisal. "Teaching didn't work out, I take it." "News travels fast," Clara observed. "It's a newspaper office, Miss Bennett." "Gathering news is what we do." He gestured to a chair. "Sit. Tell me why I should hire you." Clara sat primly on the edge of the chair. "I'm educated, I write well, and I'm not afraid of hard work." "Can you operate a printing press?" "No, but I can learn." Edmund studied her for a long moment. I need someone to take notes at town meetings, write up social notices, and help with the printing on Thursdays. Pays not much. I don't need much, Clara replied honestly. People will stare. They'll talk. They already do. A smile cracked his weathered face. Fair enough. You start tomorrow, 8 sharp. Now I've got a paper to put out. Clara left the newspaper office with a mixture of relief and trepidation. It wasn't teaching, but it was work, meaningful work that might even give her a voice in the community that had rejected her. As she crossed the town square, she noticed a crowd gathering near the sheriff's office. Curious, she approached, staying at the edges of the group. Sheriff Davis stood on the steps, addressing the townsfolk. "We'll form search parties at first light," he was saying. 3 men missing in 2 weeks is no coincidence. What about the Paxtons? Someone called out. That makes 5 altogether. The sheriff raised his hands for quiet. We don't know that the Paxtons met with foul play. They left town after foreclosure. But these other men, Simmons, Rogers, and now young Jenkins, were all working claims near Broken Ridge. They all disappeared without a trace. It's that wild band of Pomo Indians, shouted a man Clara didn't recognize. They've been spotted up near the ridge. Now hold on, the sheriff countered. We've had peace with the Pomo for years. No reason to start pointing fingers without evidence. From the corner of her eye, Clara saw Garrett Hayes standing at the edge of the crowd, his expression grim. When the meeting broke up, she found herself moving toward him. Mr. Hayes. He turned, his face softening when he saw her. Miss Bennett, didn't expect to see you here. I've just accepted a position with the Sentinel. I should know what's happening in town. She glanced toward the dispersing crowd. What do you make of these disappearances? Garrett looked around cautiously before responding. I think someone wants those claims and they're willing to remove anyone who stands in their way. You suspect Mr. Wilcox and his friends. I suspect whoever stands to gain. Wilcox, Judge Brenner, even our esteemed mayor. His voice was low. Men are greedy by nature, Miss Bennett, and gold brings out the worst in them. Will you join the search parties tomorrow? He nodded. I will, though I don't expect we'll find those men alive. He studied her face, his gaze lingering on the handkerchief. How did your inquiries go today? Mr. Walker at the Sentinel has hired me. Congratulations. Walker's a fair man, if a bit rough around the edges. Garrett hesitated. Miss Bennett, would you allow me to call on you properly? Perhaps Sunday after church. The question caught Clara by surprise. Call on me? Yes, with your aunt's permission, of course. I'd like to get to know you better. His directness was disarming. Unless I've misread your interest. Clara felt a flutter of panic mingled with something warmer. Mr. Hayes, I'm not. That is, most men don't. Most men are fools, he said simply. I'm asking to spend time with you, Clara Bennett. Your answer can be yes or no, but don't let it be because you think I don't know what I'm asking. Clara took a deep breath. Yes, Sunday after church would be agreeable. His smile transformed his face, making him look younger. I'll look forward to it. May I walk you home now? Thank you, but I have some errands to run first. Then I'll see you Sunday. Good day, Miss Bennett. He tipped his hat and walked away, leaving Clara with a strange mixture of elation and dread. What was she thinking? Agreeing to receive a caller. Garrett Hayes might seem different now, but what would happen when he saw her scars in full daylight? When the handkerchief couldn't hide the truth? The thought made her stomach clench with familiar anxiety. Yet she couldn't deny the way her heart lifted when he spoke to her, or how his green eyes seemed to see past her carefully constructed defenses. For the first time in 6 years, Clara allowed herself to feel a tentative hope. The next few days passed in a blur as Clara learned her new duties at the Sentinel. Edmund Walker was a demanding but fair employer, and Clara found she enjoyed the work more than she'd expected. There was something satisfying about seeing her words in print, even if they were just accounts of ladies' auxiliary meetings or announcements of upcoming socials. On Friday, news came that the search parties had found no trace of the missing men, but they had discovered abandoned mining equipment at each of their claims. By Saturday, rumors were flying that the claims had been restaked by men working for the Ukiah Mining Company, a venture owned primarily by Mayor Harrison, Judge Brenner, and Harold Wilcox. Convenient timing, Edmund commented dryly as he and Clara prepared the next edition. You'd almost think they knew those men wouldn't be coming back, Clara said, another line of type. Do you think the sheriff will investigate? Davis is a good man, but he's not one to rock the boat unless there's evidence of foul play. The timing isn't evidence enough. Edmund gave her an appraising look. You've got a newsman's instincts, Bennett, but be careful. Asking questions about powerful men can be dangerous. Sunday morning dawned clear and bright. Clara dressed with unusual care in a high-necked lavender dress that Aunt Martha had helped her alter to accommodate the fashionable bustle. The handkerchief, as always, was secured in place. You look lovely, Aunt Martha assured her as they prepared to leave for church. And terrified. Garrett Hayes is just a man, Clara. He puts his trousers on one leg at a time like any other. It's not him I'm afraid of, Clara admitted. It's this. She gestured to her covered cheek. Aunt Martha took her hands. If he's worth your time, your scars won't matter to him. And if they do, then he's not the man I think he is. The small church was already filling when they arrived. Clara felt the familiar stares as they took their seats, heard the whispers that followed her wherever she went in Ukiah. She kept her eyes forward, focusing on the simple wooden cross at the altar. She didn't see Garrett until after the service, when the congregation spilled out into the churchyard. He stood apart from the other men, dressed in a clean but well-worn suit, his dark hair neatly combed. When he spotted Clara, his face lit up with a smile that made her heart race. Miss Bennett, Mrs. Palmer. He approached them, hat in hand. A beautiful morning for worship. Indeed it is, Mr. Hayes, Aunt Martha replied warmly. And a fine morning for a walk, I'd say. Clara, why don't you show Mr. Hayes our garden? I believe the roses are at their peak. Clara recognized her aunt's transparent attempt to give them privacy, but she was grateful nonetheless. If you'd like to see it, Mr. Hayes. Very much, he replied, offering his arm. They walked the short distance to the cottage in companionable silence. The garden was indeed at its summer peak, with roses climbing trellises and hollyhocks standing tall against the fence. Your aunt has a gifted touch with plants, Garrett observed as they strolled along the neat paths. My mother used to say you can tell a lot about a person by how they tend their garden. And what does Aunt Martha's garden tell you about her? That she's patient, orderly but not rigid, that she appreciates beauty in all its forms. He glanced at Clara. That she's created a safe haven here. Clara nodded. This garden was my sanctuary after the accident. I could hide among the roses when the stairs became too much to bear. Garrett stopped walking. Will you tell me what happened, if it's not too painful to discuss? No one had asked so directly before. Most people either already knew or pretended not to notice. Clara hesitated, then decided that if this man was to know her at all, he should know this. It was 6 years ago. A summer storm. Lightning struck the oak tree outside my bedroom window and a branch came crashing through the glass. Her hand moved unconsciously to touch the handkerchief. The glass and splinters. The doctor did what he could, but— May I see? Garrett asked softly. Clara froze. I don't think, please. His voice was gentle but firm. I want to see you, Clara, all of you. Heart pounding, Clara slowly reached up and untied the handkerchief. She kept her eyes lowered, unable to watch his reaction as the scars were revealed, the web of raised red lines that traveled from her temple down her cheek to the corner of her mouth, pulling it slightly askew. She felt his fingers under her chin, tilting her face up. Reluctantly, she met his gaze, bracing for the revulsion or pity she had seen so many times before. Instead, his green eyes held nothing but warmth and something that looked remarkably like admiration. "Thank you," he said simply, "for trusting me with this. You're not repulsed," his brow furrowed. "Why would I be? These scars tell me you're a survivor, Clara, that you faced nature at its most violent and lived to tell the tale." His fingers moved to gently trace the line of scars, his touch feather light. "I see beauty here that others miss." Clara trembled under his touch, tears threatening. "Most people can't see past them. Most people don't really look." His hand moved to cup her unmarred cheek. "I see a strong, intelligent woman who's endured pain without becoming bitter. I see courage in the way you hold your head high despite the whispers. I see beauty, Clara, inside and out." A tear escaped, sliding down her scarred cheek. Garrett brushed it away with his thumb. "Don't hide from me," he whispered. "Please." In that moment, something shifted within Clara, a wall crumbling, a door opening to possibilities she had thought forever closed to her. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Garrett smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Good. Now, I believe your aunt mentioned lemonade." The afternoon passed in easy conversation on Aunt Martha's porch. Garrett spoke of growing up on a ranch in Montana, of losing his parents to influenza 10 years ago, of drifting through mining camps and cattle towns looking for a place that felt like home. "And have you found it?" Clara asked, watching as golden light played across his strong features. "I'm beginning to think I might have," he replied, his gaze steady on hers. When he finally took his leave as the sun was setting, Garrett asked if he might call on her again the following Sunday. Clara agreed without hesitation, the handkerchief still folded in her pocket where she had placed it hours earlier. "You didn't put it back on," Aunt Martha observed after he'd gone. Clara touched her scarred cheek. "No, he asked me not to hide from him. Smart man." Aunt Martha smiled. "I think I like Garrett Hayes very much." The next morning, Clara arrived at the Sentinel office to find Edmund Walker already setting type with unusual urgency. "There you are, Bennett. We've got a special edition to get out. Another man's gone missing, Tom Mackey. His wife came to town this morning when he didn't come home from his claim last night." Clara hung up her shawl. "That makes 6 men in total, and all with claims that showed color." Edmund's single arm worked the type with practiced efficiency. "But this time there's something different." A witness. "Mackey's 12-year-old son was with him yesterday. Says 3 men rode up, faces covered, and told his pa to clear out or suffer the consequences. The boy hid in the brush while they argued. Heard shots, then silence." Clara's blood ran cold. "Did he recognize the men?" "Not their faces, but he recognized one of the horses Judge Brenner's prize Palomino." Edmund's eyes were hard. "We're printing the story exactly as the boy told it. Sheriff Davis is out at the claim now. Won't that be dangerous, accusing the judge even indirectly?" "Journalism isn't for the faint of heart, Bennett. Sometimes the truth needs to be told, no matter who it angers." He handed her a sheet of paper. "Here's the boy's statement. Make a clean copy for typesetting." Clara worked diligently all morning, helping to set type and prepare the press. By early afternoon, the special edition was being distributed throughout Ukiah, its bold headline announcing, "Witness to murder. Judge's horse identified at scene of disappearance." She was cleaning ink from her hands when the door burst open. Harold Wilcox stormed in, followed by Mayor Harrison, their faces contorted with rage. "Walker, what's the meaning of this slander?" the mayor demanded, slapping a copy of the paper onto the desk. Edmund rose calmly. It's not slander if it's true, Harrison. The boy identified the horse. A frightened child seeing things in the woods. That's your evidence? Wilcox sneered. You'll retract this or face ruin. I'll retract nothing, Edmund replied steadily. And I've already sent copies to newspapers in Sacramento and San Francisco. If anything happens to me or my assistant here, there will be questions that even you can't silence. The mayor's eyes shifted to Clara, narrowing when he noticed her uncovered scars. Miss Bennett, I'm surprised at your involvement in this fabrication. Your aunt might find her property taxes reassessed if this continues. Clara felt a surge of anger that overwhelmed her usual self-consciousness. Are you threatening my aunt, Mayor Harrison? Because that would certainly make an interesting addition to our next edition. Wilcox stepped forward menacingly. You'd best remember your place, Miss Bennett. Damaged goods shouldn't be so bold. That's enough. The deep voice from the doorway drew all eyes. Garrett Hayes stood there, hand resting casually near his holstered gun. You gentlemen seem to be disturbing the peace. Perhaps you should continue this conversation with Sheriff Davis. This doesn't concern you, Hayes, Wilcox spat. A public threat against Miss Bennett and Mrs. Palmer concerns me greatly. Garrett stepped fully into the office. And I believe Sheriff Davis will be very interested in your reaction to this story. Innocent men don't usually threaten newspaper editors. The mayor grabbed Wilcox's arm. Come, Harold, this isn't the time or place, he glared at Edmund. This isn't over, Walker. After they had gone, Clara released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Garrett's eyes were dark with concern. Are you all right? When I read the paper, I knew there would be trouble. We're fine, Edmund assured him. Though I think our friends will be back once they've had time to plan their next move. They'll do more than threaten next time, Garrett warned. Men like that don't give up power easily. Then we'd better make sure we have more than a boy's testimony about a horse, Edmund replied grimly. Hayes, you've been asking questions about the Paxtons. What have you learned? Not enough yet, but I'm working on it. Garrett turned to Clara. I don't like the idea of you being alone after this. Is your aunt home? She's visiting a friend until tomorrow, Clara said, suddenly uneasy. But I'll be fine. You'll stay with Maggie Carson tonight, Edmund decided, naming the widow who ran the town's only boarding house. I don't trust those men, and your aunt's place is too isolated. Edmund's right, Garrett agreed. I'll escort you to Mrs. Carson's when you're finished here. Clara wanted to protest that she wasn't a child to be shuffled about, but the memory of the mayor's cold eyes and Wilcox's threatening posture silenced her objections. Very well. As the day progressed, news spread through Ukiah that Sheriff Davis had found Tom Mackey's body hidden in a shallow grave near his claim. The murder for it was clearly murder now had transformed the disappearances from rumor to grim reality. By sunset, a tense atmosphere had settled over the town. Clara gathered her things as Edmund locked up the newspaper office. Be careful, both of you, he warned. And Bennett, leave that handkerchief off. Time to show this town you're not afraid. Garrett offered his arm as they walked through the twilight streets toward the boarding house. Edmund's right, you know. Your scars tell a story of survival. Hiding them only gives power to those who would judge you. Clara smiled up at him. It's strange. For years I've been so conscious of them, and now, with everything happening. Sometimes it takes a real threat to put our fears in perspective, he observed. Mrs. Carson welcomed Clara warmly, showing her to a small but comfortable room at the back of the house. Safest room we've got, the widow assured her. And my shotgun's loaded, just in case those vultures come sniffing around. I'll be close by, Garrett promised before taking his leave. Send word if you need anything. Despite the comfort of the room and Mrs. Carson's reassurances, Clara found sleep elusive. Her mind kept returning to the mayor's threats, to the missing miners, to the weight of Garrett's promise to stay close. Something was building in Ukiah, a reckoning long overdue, and somehow she had found herself at its center. The next morning brought news that Judge Brenner had fled town overnight, taking only a few possessions and his prize Palomino. His hasty departure was as good as a confession in the eyes of most townsfolk. "The coward," Edmund said when Clara arrived at the office. "Left Wilcox and Harrison to face the music alone. Have they been arrested?" "Not yet. Davis is gathering evidence at Mackey's claim." Edmund handed her a sheet of paper. "This just came by telegraph from Sacramento. The mining commissioner is sending inspectors to review all claim transfers in the past year." Clara read the message with growing hope. "This could expose everything." "If we live long enough to see it," Edmund replied dryly. "Harrison and Wilcox won't go down without a fight. And they still have men loyal to them." As if to confirm his words, the door opened to admit three rough-looking men Clara recognized as regular patrons of the saloon. They spread out, blocking the exit. "Morning, gentlemen," Edmund said calmly, though Clara saw him reach beneath his desk where she knew he kept a pistol. "Something I can help you with. Mayor sends his regards," said the tallest of the three, a bearded man with cold eyes. "Says you need to print a retraction saying the witness was mistaken." "And if I decline?" the man shrugged. "Then we're to make sure this newspaper office has an unfortunate accident. Printing presses are dangerous. People get hurt." Clara's heart pounded, but she forced herself to stand tall beside Edmund. "People are already getting hurt. 6 men are dead because of your employer's greed." "Listen to the scarred lady talking brave," another man sneered. "Wonder if you'll be so brave when that pretty face of yours gets even more decorated." "That's enough, Jenkins." The voice came from behind the men, and they turned to find Sheriff Davis standing in the doorway, rifle in hand. Behind him stood Garrett Hayes and several other men. "You boys are under arrest for threatening citizens of this town." The bearded man reached for his gun, but Garrett was faster. A shot rang out and the man staggered back, clutching his shoulder. "Next one won't be so merciful," Garrett warned, his pistol steady. "Drop your weapons, all of you." The men complied, glaring but defeated as the sheriff and his deputies disarmed them and led them away. Garrett holstered his gun and crossed quickly to Clara. "Are you all right?" His eyes searched her face, concern evident in every line of his body. "Yes," she answered, surprised to find it was true. Despite the danger, she felt strangely calm. "Thank you for coming when you did. We've been watching the office since dawn," he explained. "Davis suspected Harrison would try something like this. What happens now?" Clara asked, looking from Garrett to the sheriff. Sheriff Davis sighed heavily. "Now we gather evidence and hope it's enough to convict Harrison and Wilcox. They've got friends in high places, even with Brenner gone." "They've got enemies now, too," Edmund pointed out. "Every family of every man who disappeared. And now that the truth is coming out, people will stand with us." The following days proved Edmund right. As news of Tom Mackey's murder and Judge Brenner's flight spread, townspeople began coming forward with information. A shopkeeper who had overheard the judge and mayor discussing clearing out claim holders. A stable hand who had seen Wilcox return with muddy clothes the night Simmons disappeared. A barmaid who had witnessed payments to the men who threatened the newspaper office. By week's end, Harold Wilcox had been arrested for conspiracy to commit murder. Mayor Harrison, following Brenner's example, had fled in the night, though posses were searching the surrounding countryside. Through it all, Clara continued working at the Sentinel, helping Edmund document the unfolding scandal. Each day she walked the streets of Ukiah with her scars uncovered, and each day it became easier to meet the gazes of her neighbors without shame. "You've changed," Aunt Martha observed one evening as they sat on the porch. "There's a confidence in you that I haven't seen since before the accident." Clara smiled, watching fireflies dance in the gathering darkness. "I suppose I needed a reminder that there are worse things than scars." "And perhaps you needed someone to see beyond them," her aunt suggested gently. "Garrett Hayes has been calling regularly for someone who's just a friend." A blush warmed Clara's cheeks. "He's been kind." "He's been smitten," Aunt Martha corrected. "And unless I'm very much mistaken, the feeling is mutual." Clara couldn't deny it. In the weeks since that first Sunday, Garrett had become a constant in her life, walking her home from the newspaper office, joining them for dinner, spending quiet evenings on this very porch talking about everything and nothing. He had never once looked at her scars with anything but acceptance, never once made her feel less than beautiful. "I care for him," she admitted softly, "but his life has been so different from mine. He's never stayed in one place very long. What if Ukiah is just another stop on his journey?" "That's a question only he can answer," Aunt Martha replied. "But I've seen the way he looks at you when he thinks no one is watching. I don't think he's planning to leave any time soon." The next day brought news that Mayor Harrison had been captured trying to cross into Nevada territory. The town buzzed with the development, and Edmund set Clara to writing up the story for the next edition. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't notice Garrett enter the office until he placed a small bouquet of wildflowers on her desk. "For the town's most dedicated journalist," he said with a smile that never failed to make her heart race. "Thank you." She touched the delicate blossoms. "Have you heard about Harrison? I was with the posse that caught him. He's singing like a canary now, trying to save his own skin by implicating Brenner and Wilcox in everything." Garrett pulled up a chair beside her desk. "It's over, Clara. They'll face justice for what they've done. And the claims, will they be returned to the original owners' families?" "The mining commissioner is working on that now. It won't bring those men back, but at least their families won't be destitute." He hesitated. "I've been thinking about the future." Clara's pulse quickened. "Have you?" "I came to Ukiah looking for a good claim to work. Somewhere I could put down roots after years of drifting." His green eyes held her steadily. "I found something more valuable than gold." "Did you?" she whispered. "I found you, Clara Bennett, a woman with more courage and strength than anyone I've ever known." He reached for her hand. "I'm not a wealthy man. I've got a decent claim up on North Ridge that's showing color, and I've saved enough to build a small house. It's not much to offer, but it's everything," she interrupted, her voice catching. "Everything I never thought I'd have." Garrett's face softened with wonder. "Clara, are you saying?" "I'm saying that I've fallen in love with you, Garrett Hayes, with the man who saw beauty when others saw only scars." He stood, pulling her gently to her feet and into his arms. "I love you, Clara. Your strength, your kindness, your determination. Everything about you." His hand came up to tenderly trace the line of scars on her cheek. "Including these. They're part of your story, our story now." When he kissed her, Clara felt as though her heart might burst with joy. Here, finally, was a man who truly saw her, all of her, and loved what he saw. They were married a month later in Ukiah's small church, with Aunt Martha beaming in the front pew and Edmund Walker giving the bride away. Clara wore no handkerchief to hide her scars, only a crown of wildflowers in her hair and a smile that outshone them all. As Garrett slipped the ring onto her finger, he whispered words meant only for her. "I promise to always see the beauty in you, Clara Hayes, all the days of my life." Afterward, the entire town gathered to celebrate not just the marriage, but the return of justice to Ukiah. The mining commissioner had invalidated all the fraudulent claim transfers, and the families of the murdered men would receive what was rightfully theirs. Harold Wilcox, Mayor Harrison, and Judge Brenner, captured in Oregon, were awaiting trial in Sacramento, their schemes exposed for all to see. As evening fell, Garrett led his bride in their first dance under lantern light in the town square. Clara moved in his arms with a grace and confidence that made heads turn. "Mrs. Hayes," he murmured against her ear, "have I told you today how beautiful you are?" Clara laughed, a sound of pure happiness. "Only about a dozen times, not nearly enough then." His arms tightened around her. "I'll spend a lifetime telling you." Later, as they stood on the porch of the small but sturdy house Garrett had built on his claim, watching the stars appear one by one, Clara thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the frightened, scarred girl hiding behind a handkerchief to the woman who had helped bring corrupt men to justice. From believing herself unlovable to finding a love so pure it transformed her. "What are you thinking about?" Garrett asked, his arms encircling her from behind. "About how sometimes the worst storms of our lives lead us to unexpected blessings," she replied, leaning back against his solid warmth. "If not for the lightning that scarred me, I might never have left Ukiah, never returned, never met you." "Then I'm grateful for that storm," he said, pressing a kiss to her scarred cheek, "and for every step that brought you to me." Inside their new home, a copy of the Ukiah Sentinel lay on the table, its headline announcing their marriage. The story, written by Edmund Walker himself, ended with words that brought tears to Clara's eyes whenever she read them. In a town recently shadowed by greed and deception, the union of Clara Bennett and Garrett Hayes stands as a testament to the enduring power of truth and love. Their story reminds us that true beauty is revealed not in perfection, but in the courage to face life's storms and emerge stronger for having weathered them. 3 years later, Clara sat on the front porch of their expanded home, watching as Garrett played with their 2-year-old son, Matthew. The boy had his father's green eyes and his mother's determined spirit, already climbing anything he could reach despite Clara's constant vigilance. The gold from Garrett's claim had provided well for them, though he had recently turned more toward ranching, finding he preferred working under the open sky with cattle to the cramped darkness of mine tunnels. Clara continued to write for the Sentinel part-time, having discovered a talent for storytelling that had blossomed under Edmund's guidance. "Mama," Matthew called, running toward her with something clutched in his small hand. "Look what Papa found." Clara gathered him onto her lap, examining the perfectly formed arrowhead in his palm. "That's a treasure indeed. We should clean it and put it with the others." Garrett followed at a more sedate pace, his smile warm as he watched his wife and son. At 35, the years had only enhanced his rugged good looks, adding a touch of silver at his temples that Clara found impossibly attractive. "I think we have a future archaeologist on our hands," he said, settling beside them on the porch swing. "He's got an eye for history." "Like his father," Clara replied. Her hand went unconsciously to her scarred cheek, a habit that had transformed over time from one of concealment to a simple gesture of remembrance. Garrett caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Still beautiful," he murmured, the words a familiar refrain between them. "Always beautiful to me." Matthew squirmed free of his mother's embrace, distracted by a butterfly fluttering near the steps. As he chased after it, Clara leaned into her husband's side, contentment washing over her. "I never thought I could be this happy," she confessed. "After the accident, I believed certain doors were closed to me forever: love, family, acceptance." "And now," Garrett prompted, his arm tightening around her shoulders. Clara looked out at their thriving ranch, at their son playing in the golden afternoon light, and finally up at the man who had taught her to see herself through new eyes. "Now I know that scars, whether visible or hidden, don't define us," she said softly. "They're just part of the story. It's what we do with the rest of the pages that matters." "Our story's a good one," Garrett said, dropping a kiss on the crown of her head, "and we're still writing it." As the sun began its descent behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Clara felt a profound gratitude for the journey that had brought her here, for the storm that had scarred her, for the courage to return to Ukiah, for the man who had looked at her damaged face and declared it beautiful. In a world that too often valued perfection above all else, she had found something far more precious: love that saw beneath the surface to the truth within. And in that love, Clara Hayes had finally, completely, come home.